Maybe we'll give it another minute before we start. All right, I guess it's noon now. I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off. Just wanting to let everybody know that we are recording these sessions this week, just so that we can have some material to share out if people weren't able to make any of the training sessions. So that's why we are recording it. And I just want to start off with introducing myself. My name is Joe Vigil. I am a treatment court analyst with the Office of the State Court Administrator at OJD. I have previously been supporting SCMS across the state. And as we transition to TCMS with Reconnect, I will be supporting that program and working with Reconnect and their team and helping to do trainings and just make sure that everything goes smoothly. And so I am going to pass it over now to Christy to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christy Combs. I'm an analyst with the Enterprise Technology Services Division of OJD and excited to be here with you today. I'll hand it over to Sophie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophie Veyu. I'm the Director of Customer Success at Reconnect. We'll be leading the training today and helping to facilitate this rollout as we move into the new year.
And real quick, before Sophie jumps in, I just wanted to let everyone know that the materials that Sophie shares today, along with a lot of other materials we're putting together, will be sent out to everybody next week. We're trying to get through the 2 weeks of training, and then we'll make sure that all of the resources are available to you. And then also, I think Christy will be dropping in a QR code into the chat here in a moment. And the intent behind that is to allow you an opportunity to ask any questions that maybe don't come up here, or if it's something you don't want to ask in the open session, that you could submit, and we will be compiling those after the 2 weeks of training to build an FAQ, and then maybe following up if there's specific questions that need specific answers. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Sophie.
Okay. So our presumption is that we have both judges and attorneys present for this session. I'm curious to know if anyone in the call has kind of watched that preliminary video that Joe shared out, or some folks going to be seeing Reconnect for the first time during this session. I'll probably assume we have some first timers here, so I'm going to spend the first 5 minutes or so just kind of giving an overview of the layout of Reconnect and how to navigate the site from kind of a basic standpoint. So share my screen here. So you should have received an email to log into Reconnect. If you did not receive that email, please feel free to drop your full name and email address into the chat, and Joe or Christy on the call will help you get logged into Reconnect at least after today's session. When you log into Reconnect for the first time, you're going to be brought to the OJD training environment account. When you have an actual login to the system, you'll be able to toggle out of this account and toggle into your actual account. For those of you who support participants in various programs, the way that you will toggle between those programs will be by clicking your name in the upper right and clicking switch account. So if you have clients who are in drug court and DUI court, you'll be able to toggle between those courts that way if you're granted access. So when you're logged into Reconnect, you're going to see whichever court you're in the upper left, and that's how you get, toggle to see participants in other courts. The dashboard has a series of tables that you can toggle between here in these kind of tabs at the top of the screen. These just contain different information about what's happening in the TCMS system. So you can view the current day's dockets, for example. You can view alerts pertaining to your clients. You can view test results. So there's just some, it's good to familiarize with what's available there and how you can navigate through those different pieces of information. Staying on the dashboard, we do have what's called a quick action. Since this group is going to be more like viewing things in Reconnect rather than really documenting a lot, you probably won't spend a ton of time here. But this is where you can launch different features to record interactions or communicate with participants from the dashboard. I don't know that I can make it much larger. Someone put that in the chat. Is it small for everyone?
Not for me right now, but you can also on your screen, as you view down at the bottom left next to Sophie's name, I believe if you hit the zoom in, you can zoom your view in even more if you'd like.
Can other folks see my screen okay, or are they able to zoom in? Okay. Another thing to note just about our platform in general is that you're going to see a lot of tables in the system. So we see some tables here on the dashboard. When we go to look at our active participant list, that's broken up into a table. So one thing I want to point out, just sort of a general Reconnect tip, is that you can control the columns and the data that you see in the tables by clicking on the 3-bar icon in the upper right. So when you click on that, you have the ability to toggle certain columns off and on depending on what you want to see in that table. That preference will save to your browsers, to your cache. So if you log in on Reconnect on a different device or you clear your cache, those preferences will clear, but otherwise those should save as you're visiting Reconnect. So on the left-hand menu, we've got several, different icons, different sections of the platform. I'm not going to spend a ton of time in those in this kind of brief overview. The area that folks definitely need to be familiar with is the client list. So clicking this is going to show you all participants who you have access to in this account. And to click on view any data for any of these clients, you're going to click on their name. And that's going to bring you to what's called their client profile. So the client profile is structured into 2 separate menus, essentially. So when you're on the main page of the client profile, you have these sections of demographic information. So this is kind of a demographic warehouse pertaining to the participant who you're viewing. And then on the left, we have what's more of a sort of treatment court activity feed for this client. So this includes like any alerts that they're receiving from the court, a record of all of their contacts with probation and treatment, a record of all documents that have been submitted, any behavioral responses that the court is applying to this individual. So those are kind of those like ongoing records of various points of treatment court activity. And then again, these blue sections are more kind of demographic information. Another thing to note, just from an account preferences standpoint, if you find yourself living in certain sections of the client profile that are perhaps like toward the bottom of your menu, you can drag those up to the top so that they always appear at the top of the screen. So you may find yourself living in that judicial involvement section a lot. That's going to be where all of their court appearance activity lives and any court notes. So if you want to just have that be at the top of your client profile view, you can drag it up there and that will save again to your browser's cache. Any questions about kind of basic account navigation before we move into pulling reports for staffing? Okay, so we're going to talk about that next. We're going to talk about how to pull the staffing report for court for the day. So the way that you do this is in the reports icon on the left, and then you click into where it says staffing sheet. There's a couple differences in how this operates in Reconnect versus SCMS that I'll call out. First is that we need to select the sections of the profiles that we want to pull data from. This is still being configured for OJD, so there will be some additional sections here, as well as some pre-configured selections. So right now you have to choose the sections you want to pull. As we move forward, these will be automatic, certain sections will be automatically checked so that anytime you pull the sheet, that data will just automatically pull on there and you won't be able to like opt out of it. Other sections will always remain optional, kind of depending on what you or your judges want to see or what your team needs to see on this report. But for now, for anyone who's following along, go ahead and just click all sections. Below that, we are controlling the range of time that we want to see information from. So there's various activity reports that pull onto this sheet that includes a record of all of the participants' contacts with treatment, probation, and case management. It includes any notes that have been tagged for the staffing report, drug test history, and then behavioral responses. So when we select a time frame here, it's pulling any of those pieces of activities from the time frame that you select. So in SCMS, the report automatically pulled all data from the last court date. In Reconnect, you choose that time frame through this date range, which defaults to the past 2 weeks. Down below is how we decide who we're pulling the report for. The first option that I want to point out is if you toggle standard client selection off and instead toggle on court date selection, that's going to allow you to pull the staffing report for today's docket. So coordinators will have scheduled court appearances for everyone who's on the docket. And this feature is going to automatically populate any clients who are scheduled for court today or for whatever date you choose. If you want to pull the reports, the day in advance, then you would select the court date of whenever the participants are due to appear. So that's one option. We have, we've been doing this training for a week now and mostly meeting with folks in person. So we've kind of been able to understand the differences in the way that programs pull their staffing reports, how much data they want to see depending on phase, all of that stuff. So another option is to select by client, not court date, but then click this wrench icon and you can actually select by caseload or by what we call client group. So client group is a very general categorization tool in Reconnect. You can create a client group for literally anything and then put participants into that group. So really simple examples would be phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But if you are in a bigger program or you do court differently than that, you can also create a client group for phase 1 Monday court, phase 1 Wednesday court, or it could just be all the people who go to court on Friday. So like depending on how your program does court and decides who's going to court when, you can create client groups for that so that you're able to just select a group and have the relevant participants populate in the list as opposed to having to put all of their names in individually. So if anyone is following along, you should all have access to a dummy client profile in Reconnect. The client is going to be your name. So if you are following along and you want to pull this, you can select your client from the drop down. And then to run the report, you scroll up and click this fetch icon. And that's going to load for a minute. Depending on how many people you're pulling the report for, it may take up to 60 seconds for that to load. So just be aware of that and know that that spinning icon will indicate that it's still loading. Once the report has loaded, you're going to click this view PDF button, and that's going to bring you to the report for that client. My understanding is that this is quite a bit different from what you're used to seeing in SCMS. So just want to call out where certain data points live. And Joe, feel free to jump in at any time.
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to highlight, especially for the judges and attorneys, some of the feedback that I've received over the last few years with SCMS is that our staffing reports were a little clunky and smashed together. So I'm excited with this new layout. I think it'll be a little easier to read, and it's going to give you some information that you didn't get previously, a little more in detail about attendance for things like group sessions. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then also I've had a lot of feedback, specifically from judges, that you'd like the ability to be able to decide what you see on the staffing report. So I think that this version will allow a little bit more freedom to do that for yourselves.
So at the top, we have some basic program information. This is actually, I've got a couple of clients that I could sell this for. Try this one. If sobriety time has been entered into Reconnect correctly, you'll see that here. You'll see a record of all test results here. Case information will integrate from Odyssey. That will be visible here. Staff will also be able to input participants' probation end date into the case information section. So if that's relevant for you to see on this report, that will be available. Any notes with a staffing tag will pull onto the report if they meet the criteria of the date range that the report is being pulled for. This is another one that's come up. So if it's valuable to see the various team members that are working with the participant, that could include everyone from attorneys to treatment to probation, case management, peer support, anything like that. Those team members can all be documented, and that data can appear on the report as well. Any confirmed alerts, so violations that have been confirmed by a staff member will appear on the report with any relevant notes that were entered into that alert. Sanctions, incentives, and service adjustments will appear. And then down in the lower right is where their contacts with treatment, probation, and case management will live. So staff will be documenting those contacts through our appointments feature, as well as any notes related to those contacts, and whether the participant attended or missed. So that data will all live here. We are always shooting to get all data into one page. We know that's a really important user experience for a lot of folks. This is, I think, a pretty abnormal amount of data to appear on the sheet. So we obviously can't fit infinite amounts of data onto one piece of paper. So in this case, it did spill into the second page, but I think you'll find for the most part that this takes advantage of space enough to minimize the amount of data that's like spilling into a second page. But that's just going to depend on how detailed the visit notes and the staffing notes and whether the participant has a higher number of non-compliance alerts, that sort of thing. Any questions or anything, Joe, that you want me to cover about the staffing report or how to pull it?
No, I think kind of already said it. I think there's a lot more information here that'll be a little bit clearer. I'm pretty excited about it, and I think as you start using it in your programs, I think that you will really appreciate the information. The one thing, and forgive me, Sophie, if you said this already, but the one thing that we're adding is the previous court note, which is something you have currently in SCMS. So we will be adding that into this as well. So whatever your coordinator wrote at the last court date for that participant will populate onto the staffing sheet as well.
Yep, that's a great call out. Okay, so going back into the main Reconnect site, let's talk a little bit about the client profile, and then we'll talk about messaging. So for anyone who's following along, if you go to the client list, again, you should have a dummy client in there that's your name. And if you click on your name, you'll be brought to their profile. So just a couple things to point out about the profile. I'm not going to explain all of these various demographic sections. You will have the ability to view all of the demographic information pertaining to the clients that you have access to. So just kind of familiarize with what's going to be captured here, and also note that these demographic sections are not yet configured to OJD's specifications. So if you have clients who are veterans and you're in the military section and you see that there's certain fields missing there, just know that those are actively being configured over the next 2 weeks. On the left-hand side of the client profile in that left menu is the Documents tab. Go to a client where I have a document uploaded. This is where you can view documents or upload documents. The way this works is a little funky. In order to view a document, you actually need to click this edit icon and then you can view the file. I'm going to definitely work on getting that to be an eyeball, or at least adding an eyeball, so that's more intuitive, but that's how you get to a document if you need to view it. It'll just open in a separate tab, whatever's been uploaded. And then on the left as well, any behavioral responses that have been issued to the client. I mean, incentives and sanctions will be documented in court, but service adjustments may be documented in more kind of real time as adjustments to supervision or treatment are being made. So those will live here in the client profile. Again, just sort of like referencing conversations that came up in our in-person sessions last week. We had a lot of staff request sort of like to be notified of these things. We don't really have a staff-facing notification for these behavioral responses. So like you're not going to get a notification from Reconnect if someone delivers an incentive to your client. This notification system that we have is actually brand new. That's popped up since I started these trainings. So I would imagine that's kind of the direction that we're going in, is like allowing certain activities within TCMS to trigger a notification to the people who are assigned to that case. So we may look at, doing that for the behavioral responses in the future. But just again, sort of speaking to some conversations that have come up. Yeah, Joe.
I think one other thing though, that any of the incentives, sanctions, or service adjustments that happen when you pull that staffing report, you would see that there.
Yes.
So even if you didn't necessarily know the day it happened, I think judges, when you were in staffing, you'd be able to see, oh, over this last 2 weeks, I see that they got 2 incentives from their probation officer, or there was a service adjustment. So I think it will help, at least being there on the staffing report, to kind of flag the discussion for you in staffing.
Yeah. In the events tab of the client profile, when you click on that, you can view their appointment history. This also pulls onto the staffing report. So this is just kind of a tour of the client profile. But yeah, any contacts that have been logged with this participant will live here with the outcome that was documented by staff who scheduled the appointment. And you can sort of update the time range that's being pulled for that if that's of interest. Any notes related that are documented. This does not include notes that were logged in a contact. These are just general notes, which we're really only advising that folks use for general staffing notes, or maybe it's like logging a call with a family member or something like that is where general notes would be utilized. One thing I want to call out that's relevant for this group, just in terms of an enhancement that we have coming, is right now activity that's logged in various parts of TCMS, although it does all go into the staffing report, which is probably where you'll spend the most time anyway. But in terms of a client profile, other than that staffing report, there isn't a super unified place to like get a general sense of someone's treatment court activity. So that's something that we're going to be adding soon. It'll be kind of like an activity feed to each profile, almost like a Facebook feed in terms of its concept, where you'll be able to see notes from various features, test results, court appearances, things like that appearing in that sort of like a feed format, so that you can just get a quick sense of how someone's doing and what their activity has been over the past couple weeks. So that's something that we'll be excited to offer in 2026 for sure. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how our communication tools within Reconnect. and how to utilize those. Yeah, I think we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about the mobile app. So we're going to talk about our participant mobile app next. Reconnect has a communication suite that can be used for staff to communicate with other staff, as well as for certain members of the team to be able to communicate directly with participants if the program is using our participant engagement app. So we don't offer any type of like text the participant's phone, that type of thing. We only offer communication through our mobile app. So participants need to have access to our mobile app, have access to an app-enabled device to be able to communicate here. But the idea is that you could use this communication tool to prep for staffing with other team members. You could use it to check in with someone's treatment provider if you had a question. It's a much more secure place to have conversations and be able to mention people by name versus ID number compared to email. So this messaging tool will be available to you specifically for being able to communicate with other staff. We are not recommending that you use it to communicate with clients just due to attorney-client privilege. Everything that is, like every message that is sent in TCMS is available to the whole team to view. It's a public record, right, Joe? So we want to be really mindful about what types of communication you're having in here.
Yeah, one of the things I've been trying to remind, especially at the attorney-judge session, is for defense attorneys, if there are any on today, letting your clients know that if they are using the engagement app and they're sending a message, be careful what you say. Don't think if they're having a conversation with just their case manager and they're really mad at their PO and want to complain, that PO won't actually also see that message. The messages are available to everyone on the team that has access to that client. So just really making sure that there's full transparency, that these are not private messages as far as it relates to the team. The team has access to them, and that these messages don't go away. Like the participant can't delete their own message. We can't even delete it. We would have to send a ticket to the vendor if we wanted something deleted. So just being really cognizant of the fact that they're basically like a permanent thing.
And one thing I want to call out is that your participants will not be able to message you unless you message them. So think of it as like you're creating a chat on your phone. And then, I don't know, that's sort of a bad example. But basically, like the ability to create a chat room is limited to staff, and participants can only message in chat rooms that they've been added to. So if you just never create a chat room with your client, they're never going to be able to message you and reconnect. However, once you create that chat room, they can now send a message to you and reconnect at any point. So just know that you are opening that door for them to communicate with you through the TCMS system if you elect to create a chat room with your client. So to create a room, you just click, you're in the communication suite portal, you click this blue plus sign, and then you can add either other users or up to one client to a chat. Note that you can also group chat with your participant and other staff members. So if you may be added to a chat where treatment and probation are discussing a particular incident or request or situation that they want to involve you in, so they can include the client in that chat and add you and other staff members as well. We do envision this being a really helpful resource to help programs staff remotely. In that case, we're recommending that you have one chat room per participant for those virtual staffing conversations. So in that case, it would be like Sophie Vayu staffing prep. You would not add the client to this because you're going to be talking about them and prepping for staffing. And then you would add the other team members who need to be a part of that staffing conversation. Joe, anything you want to add there?
I just want to reiterate what you said. I think we would encourage the teams to only have one staffing chat per participant, because if there was ever a records request or the participant requested their records, any kind of request that we get, we would want to be able to know that this chat goes to this participant. There is a way to archive chats. So if you start getting too many of them and the participant's no longer in the program, it can be archived so it doesn't show up on your screen. But what we are really hoping is that this will alleviate some of the email staffing that goes on currently. Email is not a secure way to share information, and by doing it behind the, not the paywall, but the the wall of Reconnect, that's a little more secure. We feel a lot better about those conversations happening there. So we would encourage you, if you can't meet in person for a staffing at some point, but you need to talk about something that's coming up or an emergency with the team, utilize these rooms for that purpose, and just make sure you, like Sophie showed, that you highlight the name of the participant and then that it's a staffing session.
Once you're in a chat room, just a couple things. You can attach documents. You can view read receipts by clicking on this little light bulb icon, and there will be your read receipts. You can react to messages by clicking on the little emoji icon. Yeah, those are just some basic functionalities there. I think that's about all. I mean, this group wouldn't necessarily need to send a bulk message, Joe, or would that ever be applicable?
Probably not. I think just that knowing that it exists, but no, I would think attorneys and judges would not be the ones sending out the messages, but your coordinators or providers may.
Okay, great. All right. So that's kind of, using that for staff to staff communication, and knowing that participants will have access to communicate with other team members if they're using our mobile app. So next we're going to transition to giving you an overview of our mobile app. And then, so I'm going to talk about the app, and then Joe's going to talk about the OGC consent form that participants will be signing if they are going to be utilizing our mobile app, and sort of the recommendations from OJD as it pertains to that. Okay, so our mobile app is called Reconnect Community. It is designed to enhance a program's use of our case management offering, which will be known as TCMS in Oregon. It is not a required feature to utilize. So the TCMS system, the data management, the record keeping, that is first and foremost the priority in Oregon, but this feature is available to all treatment courts in the state. To enhance their participants' experience of being on the program by connecting them to information and resources as they move through the program. It's designed to be downloaded onto their personal phone, so they do not need a Reconnect device to access this. Each participant has a unique login to the app that gets them to their unique homepage with information and data that's been shared with them specifically. It integrates with several features of TCMS. So, for example, when a participant has a court appearance scheduled in TCMS, that will appear on the homepage of the app in this next court date tile. Their program documented sober time, as well as any other streaks that are set for them in the system, will appear in this tile here. And you see I've got my kind of official sober date, but then I also have a personal streak for nicotine free. The way this tool works, it's called Success Streaks, is it gives staff the option to allow participants to track certain streaks independently, meaning I have the ability as a participant to update my days nicotine free, but I don't have the ability to update my sober days. So that sobriety streak has been locked, but my nicotine-free streak is unlocked, and I'm able to modify that myself. So they'll see that if they have streaks set, which everyone should have at a minimum program sober date set. They will have access to their phase goals as well as treatment plans if the treatment provider is utilizing that feature. Other team members can also assign goals, so they could have probation related or case management, or if anyone wants to create personal goals for them in the app, they can do that. This feature, yeah, will show them their progress toward their phase goals though. Those are some of the key pieces that integrate with the case management system. And then beyond that, the app has other features that are more independent of kind of the official case management tools. So this includes allowing programs to upload both websites and PDFs for the participants to access on demand from the home screen of the app. We have a learning management system, so courses can be assigned to the participants in the app and tracked. Programs can assign support group attendance requirements. So rather than doing sign-in sheets, participants can actually check in with their photo and their location when they get to a support group to demonstrate that they actually attended versus being able to like potentially forge a sign-in sheet. We can have them submit support group reflection forms for the app. So maybe in addition to checking in at a group, I'm also submitting a form that says, here's the meeting I went to, the facilitator's name, and what I got out of the meeting. So just different engagement tools like that that can just increase a program's ability to support people and maintain accountability through those ongoing program requirements. This screen right here is just 4 different screenshots from the mobile app. So on the left, I am showing what it looks like when our drug test randomization feature is in use. We can allow participants to check in for testing every morning using the app. We do also offer a call-in line. So if your program is currently doing this manually, it's definitely something we encourage exploring through Reconnect as a way to automate true random testing. To the right of that, we have another screenshot of the homepage of the app. So you can just see a little bit more of like down here is where I've got a packet of program information and resources that I can launch. I've got a course that's been assigned to me. If I click into my goals, this is similar to what you'll see. This is one of our interactive goals where you're actually requiring the participants to submit the item that you're requesting. That feature will definitely still be available, but our phase goals will look a little different and they'll be more view only for the clients. But just to show kind of some of that positive reinforcement and like gamification that's added to the app. And then this is what a view of our messenger looks like for the participants. So Joe, do you want to jump in with some of the fun consent agreement stuff?
Sure. I just dropped something in the chat, which is a document that the programs team and Office of General Counsel threw together with some FAQs about the app and location pin drops, because I know that that's a sensitive subject. I think one of the things we want to highlight is that so there's a general consent that all participants are required to submit just to use the to allow the team to have access to them in a case management platform. That will still continue. There will now be a second consent that will be required for the participant to sign if they want to use the engagement app. That way they're aware of what the application does. There are a few things like Sophie mentioned, like check-ins for support groups. If you're using the randomization tool and they're checking in to see if they have a UA, or if they send a message where a pin drop location is captured by the system. And we just wanted to make sure that your clients are aware of that, your participants are aware of that, and that to let everyone know that OJD's intent behind allowing this as part of the system is not to act as a supervisor, like a probation component. The intent and the hope is that the judges, attorneys, everybody on the team will use this as information towards honesty to direct them to treatment as a treatment response. Everyone that works in treatment court knows that honesty is a really big hurdle to get through with people early in recovery. And so we're hoping that the use of this system is for that purpose, to engage with treatment and not to gotcha and, put someone on road crew or in jail. That is not the intent and the hope that OJD has about allowing this to be a service that's available. Your clients also have the ability to turn off location monitoring. And if they do that, they just will not be able to fully utilize the app. They'll have some functionality, but not the full functionality. And just wanted to make sure that we got that information to you. And if you have any additional questions about that, please, we'll drop in the QR code with the question survey. Please drop those in there and we can get back to you to answer any of your questions.
Anything else, Joe, that you want to cover before we wrap up? Or any questions that folks have?
I can just throw in, I think one of the exciting reasons that we wanted to move to this kind of a platform is at a lot of the trainings at All Rise over the last few years, I've heard time and time again that we need to start meeting our clients where they're at and giving them the tools that are current age. You know, SCMS was a little dated. Before that, we had like an access database that people could use across the state, which was pretty wonky. So we're trying to make sure that we are providing platforms that are meeting the times, essentially, meeting people where they're at. We recognize not every single participant may have a phone for the engagement app, and some programs may decide not to use the engagement app with every participant just in general. That's fine, but we want to make sure that it's available to you and that you have the resources to sort of operate in the current day and age of technology. And I just wanted to share too that Reconnect, in my experience working with Reconnect prior to the OJD contract when they were working with CJC, they have expanded their platform and their services like 10 times over in the last few years. They are constantly adding new features that are cutting edge, that are in line with best practices. And I'm confident that they'll continue to do that. And that's one of the reasons that OJD was excited to contract with them to provide our case management platform and this engagement app. And the other piece of that is I want to highlight the best practices for rolling out a case management platform for a large organization or statewide is 18 months. And of course, we gave them 6. So we are doing this in a very compressed time frame. So you're going to notice a lot of things that the way the system is on day 1 on January 6th, it's probably going to look a lot different by January 6th because we're going to be improving and adding. Now, I want to clarify, not different in that we're going to make huge changes, but there are a lot of things that we've been talking with Reconnect about doing that will automate certain things or make things easier for you and your coordinators and teams. So I'm really excited about that, and I hope you all are as well, and genuinely appreciate everything that you have shared, Sophie.
Thank you.
Any questions from anyone on the session? All right, that QR code is dropped in there. If you think of questions later, please do not hesitate. We will be reviewing that, also sharing it with Reconnect so that we can make sure we get you answers to any of the questions you have. And maybe you'll highlight something that we haven't thought about doing for improvements in the future. So please don't be shy about sharing that with us. And then we will also be dropping another QR code in the chat here in just a moment that is a feedback survey as well, which maybe that's what this one is. Oh, the first code, sorry, Christy provided 2 of them. So this second one is just general feedback on this session. So if you feel so inclined, we would appreciate your feedback. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Have
Bye-bye.
a great afternoon.